Hola, Regina.
Hola, ¿me escuchan?
Yeah, a little bit low, but we're gonna wait for a few people to come in, and then I'll do a brief introduction, and then I'll send you like an invite to be on video. ¿Está bien?
Ok, perfecto.
Hopefully, people show up.
It's no secret.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, wherever you are at. Welcome to 10,000 Tacos here on Fireside. Alongside my co-host, Jose Ralat, I'm Isidro Salas. And speaking of Jose, today he's on assignment. He's actually, he's our senior correspondent, and he's out getting more taco stories. No, I'm serious. Actually, he's usually here, but he's in Austin doing some taco work. That's what he does. That's his day job. That's his like the dream job, right? But that's what he does. So he's on assignment today. So he's not going to be able to join us. But either way, the show must go on. 10,000 Tacos is a show about some of the hidden ingredients in the taco life, right? I live a taco life. Jose lives a taco life. Our guest, whether she knows it or not, I'm kidding, she lives a taco life. Each week, we bring you conversations around this taco life. And often enough, we find that it's not just the tacos that power our lives. So today on the show, I want to bring you someone with a cool, no pun, cool story. And we're going to ask for your help in, helping her, so to speak. So, but first, let me just do a quick introduction. Mexico has no shortage of athletes. When I think about Mexican sports and the athletes, I think of Lorena Ochoa. I think of Laura Serrano. I think of Canelo Alvarez. I think of Julio Cesar Chavez. I think about Chicharito, Carlos Vela, Hugo Sanchez. I also think about Fernando Valenzuela. So if you guys don't know that name, we need to do a little bit of a Google search. The names I just put out there were associated with boxing, football, which is soccer in America. I'm in America. Golf and baseball. I don't personally ever think about winter sports when it comes to Mexican athletes. But today on the show, I want to welcome Regina Martinez. She's a medical doctor specializing in emergency medicine. She's also a cross-country skier attempting to be the first Mexican woman to qualify for this sport in the 2026 Olympics. She's from Mexico City, DF to be more specific. And I believe DF is the heart of the taco heart of Mexico. So I think she knows a little bit, or at least a thing or two about tacos. So let me ask her to come on video and welcome her in. Let's see, invite to video. Regina,
Hola
welcome to
todos.
the
Hi
show.
everyone. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no. Thank you for being here. This is awesome that you can make it. We are delighted, and I know you're busy, so we'll just get to the point. The first question that I have, because you're busy and this is an important thing, and the question perhaps is the most important question hanging over the taco community. So we need your help in answering it. So are you ready?
Sure.
It's a very
Yes.
important question. Do you need a moment to take a deep breath? Okay.
I got
so the question is, are burritos tacos?
No.
Hold on. We need to celebrate there. Oh, no. Wrong button. So, it's an interesting question because, apparently there's people out there saying, Jose Ralat, saying that they are, but we'll leave that for another day. It's a fun question. So I want to start off with, you've lived in several parts of the United States, right? And, hopefully we'll get in a little bit into that a little later, but what has surprised you the most about the way Mexican food is offered, served, or even presented? What has surprised you the most?
Surprised me the most. Okay, so I lived in Texas for a while, and so I know Tex-Mex food. And in general, I feel like I've learned that there's variations of Mexican food. Like Tex-Mex food, I think is its own category of food.
Yeah.
And it's still great. Like I still love it, but I don't necessarily consider it Mexican food. So kind of once you make those distinctions, I think it's kind of you can enjoy all kinds of like Mexican or like Tex-Mex and that kind of food, like Chicano food too. One thing that has surprised me, I guess, or currently, so I live in Miami right now. And even though you would think they have a huge Hispanic population, in my mind, most of the Hispanics that I've ever known have been Mexican in Texas, and like other parts of the states too, but especially like in Georgia and things. But now moving to Miami, I find that like there's no Mexicans. So that's one of the things that like now, even though there's like taquerias or other kinds of foods, like it's interesting because even being in Miami, there's like spins on it. So there'll be like Cuban, Mexican fusions, and so that's one of the things that surprised me is just how much variation there is in the U.S. with like Mexican food and Mexican infusions.
And you were in Minnesota or up where Minnesota?
Yes.
What was the Mexican food up there like?
There you could find some authentic things because there was a good pocket of so it's Lake Street. So on Lake Street in Minnesota, you get a lot of like the Mexican community. It's like pockets of like Mexican community, and it's like Somali population and some Hmong. But there you can get somewhat authentic Mexican food. It's like hole in the wall places where there's like an abuelita there cooking, and
yes.
so there's a lot of guisados. So I could find some good Mexican food. It wasn't like all over. Like there were other like taco places and things, but I think the best one was always known to be on Lake Street, and I think that's also maybe why there's not a lot of competition outside of Lake Street because everyone knows like you can't compete with a Mexican.
Yeah. So real quick, Jose not being here is because he's out on assignment. So I apologize in advance for that because I know Jose's cool. But one thing, Jose has an allergy reaction to the word authentic. He hates that word.
Yeah.
But you said something magical, right? Abuelita. I've heard him use the abuelita principle. The reason why people use authentic. Some people could get away with using authentic, but I believe that los güeros, the gabachos, who try to sell this food, when they say authentic, that's what really tarnishes that. So anyway, just a quick disclosure. He won't get mad. He said he'll listen to this on the replay. It'll be funny. We decided to name this episode Loco-Motion, right? Because the word locomotion is used to describe cross-country skiing, right? When you look it up, that's right. And so loco in Spanish means crazy. Yeah. So I'm not saying you're crazy, but it's a cool way of connecting the fact that no other Mexican woman has ever qualified for the Winter Games in this sport, right? So the question that I have for you, what in the world was going through your mind when you decided that you wanted to do this? And all joking aside, why did you get into this?
Yes. First of all, I have to say I love the name Locomotion. I'm gonna like add it to one of my posts or something. I'll reference you. We'll talk about it, but I love it because it is a crazy sport and it is a very, very, very like physically demanding sport, the most demanding I've ever done. So essentially, like I just lived in Minnesota, and that's where I went for medical school. And in medical school, I learned that if you don't do winter sports, like you have a pretty miserable 5 months of the year. For you, you're just like indoors or like running from like point A to point B, and it can be tough. And so what I kind of got introduced to cross country skiing second year of medical school, and then it wasn't up until third year where I had a little bit more time towards the end of third year and things that I Googled like how many Mexicans have gone to the Winter Olympics. And I found out that in 2018, only 4 athletes went. This past in Beijing, only 4 athletes went. And so I decided to try. I'm like, well, when I realized that no Mexican woman had ever done it for the sport, I was like, I mean, I have 5 or 6 months of snow. I, have a little bit of free time. Like, at the least I can do is try, I try for my country. And so that's kind of how it all started. I emailed and and DM'd actually on Instagram one of the athletes that went in 2018 for cross country skiing, and I told him my story. I'm like, hey, I've done a lot of sports in the past. Like I've done soccer, this, and that. I think I'm decently fit, and I have a bunch of snow. So like, what can we do about this? And he was really excited about it, and actually flew from McAllen, Texas, is where he lives now. He flew from there to Minnesota to teach me how to ski, to like help me buy my gear and get me plugged in, and has been coaching me since.
Oh, how cool. So
Yeah.
had you been in another part, like when was this in Minnesota? Was it before the pandemic?
This was right before the pandemic. Yeah, it's like a year or two before the pandemic. And then the moment I like committed and decided to like buy all my gear and things, I think that was right before. So the pandemic was officially declared in March. This was like January where I bought my skis. He taught me how to ski. I skied the Berkey, which is a 50-kilometer race that they have in Wisconsin that almost everyone from medical school and dental school in Minnesota does. And so that was one of my goals before graduating, was I want to do this race. So then I did this race in February. I did my first official, also FIS, the International Ski Federation race to start the process to qualify. And they both went well, and then the pandemic hit.
So for our English speaking crowd, 50 kilometers is what in miles? I'm one of
it's
those.
like 32 miles. It's like 30 plus
Ooh,
miles. Yeah,
man,
it's a lot of miles. And it's a race that's from one point to the other. So it's not like, oh, you can loop and just like, okay, do half of it and then like leave. If you're stuck in the middle of the woods, you gotta go either forward or backwards.
Yeah, no, that's that.
So
See,
it is a
that's
locomotion.
locomotion. I love that. So you hinted at this, like you were already sort of in shape. You already did sports, right? So it's not like you went into it like, yeah, I don't know, man. Let's give this a try. You had some sports experience or some fit experience, and you have to be in shape to do this, right? I can imagine it takes its toll on your taco consumption. Yay or nay?
It actually increases.
Tell me, I'm gonna go because I'm in Colorado, so there's plenty of snow here. So I'm gonna, if it means more tacos, I'll no, I won't.
No, yeah, it increases for sure. I like learn because there's the most, so out of all the sports like that exist, swimming is up there because it's So as far as like your VO2 max basically is your capacity to like maximize all the oxygen that your blood cells have all the oxygen in them, and like to maximize the capacity of delivering into tissues. Basically, the highest VO2 max sport in the world is cross-country skiing. Number two is, I think, swimming. So these are things I didn't know about when I signed up. So I was like, oh yeah, this I've done marathons, it'll be fine. And then I do this, and I'm like, oh God. So it's
I
a
guess
lot of
I,
energy and a
I'm
lot of
guessing that's
tacos.
why. Yeah, well, I'm guessing that's why the Republicans want to shut down the border because it's so easy. That I mean, it's in us to swim and to run. No, that's a horrible
Yeah.
joke. I'm sorry. I know. I'm Mexican. Hopefully, I could say that. Hopefully, people don't get upset. Uh, but yeah, it's there's this myth, and I believe it's a myth. And you're a doctor. You went to school to and there's we'll get into that a little bit later of what kind of doctor you are. But I would imagine that when you scroll through TikTok through Instagram, you have all these influencers saying that, you needed to do this if you want to lose weight. You need to do this. And oftentimes a lot of what I've heard is you have to cut down the tortilla. You have to get rid of the tortilla. You can't be eating tripas. You can't. I'm like, there's something wrong about that. Like we could have our tacos and be fit still, right?
Oh yes, I feel like especially depending on like the type of sport you do, but in general, like as long as they're not, because there's some meats and some things that are more greasy and things that like yeah they're probably not the best for heart health, but in general, like in theory, like a tortilla is a great type of like carb and a great source of fuel. Actually, people who do some of my friends that do Ironman competitions, which is you do swim like 2 miles, you like bike ride 12 miles, and then you run a marathon, so 26.2 miles. I have friends that do that. They'll wrap tortillas around like their bicycles, and they'll eat them when they're biking, as like a fuel recharging.
That's like a
Or they'll
power
put peanut
bar.
butter, or yeah, it's like a power bar. And so like yeah, in theory, yeah, we have the maíz, the tortilla, or the harina, which is still like not as good as I think the maíz, but good carbs. And then the meat, and then if you have the vegetables, it all depends, I think, on like the quality of ingredients, and like if it's not like super greasy and things, and then maybe pushing it over. But in
Yeah.
general, like for instance, for this sport, yeah, you need to replace a lot of calories to keep going, because a lot of, for instance, my training sometimes it's like 2 hours of skiing and then gym, or like 3 hours of like roller skiing because I live in Miami now.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, you'd look
like
a little bit
balance.
weird if you were out there
Yeah,
with just regular skis in Miami. Maybe if you're wearing a bikini, you could get away with it.
I know,
I'm
in the
not saying you
sand.
should
I
post
have thought
that.
about it.
Okay, then post it. I'm not saying that you'll get a lot more followers. Wink, wink, audience members. No, and Jose and I have discussed here on the show and in other platforms how nixtamalization, right? The process of taking the corn and making it into masa that has nutritional value. And clearly you believe in that. Of course, if you take down a whole plate of, allegedly this is what I do is I'll order 6 tacos to the al pastor without the pineapple because I'm allergic to pineapple, and then two al pastor, 2 tripa, and 2 cabeza. Of course, I'm not gonna, if I want to maintain this girlish figure, I can't be eating that all the time, right? So, but there is nutritional value behind that, and I I hate to say it, I'm an American, or we're all Americans because America's there, but as a U.S. citizen, let's just say, we love our grease. We love our grease. We love the big foods. We love the big plates. So obviously, portions is always important. You just said it. You can't be eating all that stuff all the time, right?
Yeah, it all is a matter of balance. I feel like input equals output. So like if you're gonna eat like a big heavy meal, so that's also sometimes what I do. Like if I know, okay, I know I have to do this much endurance training, or this like amount of time of swimming or running or like these miles or this and that, like I tailor what I eat to what I'm going to do. So I do think ahead of that, and also after the fact. So like I'm like, okay, well, so I need to eat like something heavier in carbs, because I'm going to do a bunch of like cardio right now. And so I'll
Mhm.
do that. And then afterwards, I'm like, okay, well, we also need to build muscle. So then I'll have something a little bit heavier in protein, less in carbs, because then after that, it's just kind of resting and recovering. And so in general, I feel like sometimes that's the way I think about it. It's like input has to be equal to output to stay the same. So if if you know what you're going to be doing, or like how busy of a day, or if you're going to walk a lot at work, or like if you have, depending on what you do during the day, that's kind of one of my big principles, so to speak.
So you're very unlikely to train to the taco truck, because there aren't any taco trucks in Miami. So there's a business opportunity, people. Just saying, right? But you're not likely to be having a big al pastor burrito and training. What's your favorite?
Not right before. Afterwards, yeah, probably.
I feel weird asking this to a fellow Mexicana, right? I was born in Mexico, but I was raised in the United States. I don't know. Was that the case for you? When did you
So I was born in Mexico, and then I moved around a lot. I've actually lived, so I've moved like every 2 years, every 4 years, and things. I moved when I was 2, first to Tennessee, then from there to Miami, then from there to Mexico, Atlanta, and then just all over, and then Costa Rica even too for a little bit. That's where I graduated from high school. I was not in the military. I'm not a military kid. My dad he used to work for Coca-Cola and was a chemical engineer slash business. And so we moved around a lot, like in search of the American dream when we were little, until then we came back with a green card, and then I went to college and got all my education here.
Oh, so you didn't have to cross the border like me. I crossed the border like a girl. I think I had a fake. I was like 5-6 years old. So at that age, you could put two children next to each other, right? Cut both their hair. You can't tell the difference. So I was a pretty little girl growing up. Anyway, so no, and the reason I asked is because, if you grew up in Mexico, I don't know. I didn't grow up in Mexico, but you get this food all the time, right? And so asking the question, what's your favorite? It's tough because it's tough because you eat it all the time. But what is your favorite? Like if it's a taco, it's a chile relleno. What is your favorite?
Oh, it's this is one thing that I'd love to share with the world. Like there's so many amazing Mexican dishes that are like that you've never even heard of. So like for instance, like I feel like in general we don't get them in the US, and I've lived in many states and I don't think I see them very often. And I feel like if you don't know about them, you're not going to actively try them, because you just don't know what they are. So for instance, I love chile rellenos. Chile rellenos are these like big poblano peppers that they're prepared in a way. That kind of removes the spices. You like take away the veins they're called inside of it, and then you put it to the fire and let it kind of like roast a little bit on the outside, and then you can put like frijoles, so you can put like beans, rice, maybe some meat, some cheese inside, like stuff this poblano pepper, and then you can put like bathe it in like tomato sauce, like just like homemade like tomato sauce. Or it can be like a creamy like white sauce, and then put some other toppings on top. Sometimes you can also put the pepper and like you like dip it in like egg and kind of have it. It's not like deep. It's not fried. It's just like, I don't know how you would describe
little
that.
Crunchy.
It's capeado. But yeah,
speaking of the chile relleno, and Jose might get upset with me, so I'll ask for forgiveness later. And it's not just him. You've gotten to talk to him. And for those of you guys barely joining us, Jose usually is here, but he's on assignment. He's getting more taco information. He's in Austin right now. So he couldn't make it because he's actually doing something. But anyway, I know he's right. I'm not saying he's wrong, but he talks about places that have a chile relleno taco. And those are the things that annoy me. Not from him, but because a chile relleno is a dish on its own, right? Of course, what you do with the tortilla is you could do all kinds of things, right? You could chop that chile relleno and put it on a tortilla. And then what upsets me, and I could never say it correctly, I'll chop it up here, but it is, there's this word superfluous. It's more than necessary. Like for people to say, hey, I just put chile relleno on a taco and I have chile relleno tacos. Oh, right. And I mean, that's what happened to birria. We eat birria with a tortilla. And all of a sudden, in TJ or somewhere, it became a thing. Instagram took it over, and now there are birria tacos. I'm not saying they're not good. Some are good, some are shitty. But it's no different. Like, what about when somebody is gonna invent the menudo taco? That's if you had menudo, that's how it sounds silly, right? So when somebody says we're known for our birria tacos, like you're offending a lot of abuelitas, in my opinion. So what's your thought on something like that? Please disagree with me.
I've actually never heard of tacos de chile relleno. I mean, in theory, I feel like yes, you can put anything inside a tortilla and call it a taco. Um, except for I feel like chicken, unless it's like I mean, I don't maybe cochinita pibil is pork, or tinga can also be. But for instance, I think one of the things that people think is like, oh, I'm gonna get a chicken taco, and for me, that's like a flauta. Even if it's not like crunchy, like in general, like we don't really have a lot of chicken tacos in Mexico. We call those other things, and we have the presentation be a little bit different. Um, but yeah, I mean, I feel like maybe you can. I mean, it may be okay to put anything in a tortilla and call it a taco, but and at the same time, it's like, but is it a taco though? Like you're saying, for instance, if you were to put peanut butter and jelly inside a tortilla, is that a taco? I don't know.
That's a good question. And you know, it's interesting. Like Jose goes and finds these places, and they're legitimate places. I'm not saying they're not good. I'm not saying that you can't put a chile relleno on a tortilla, but to call it something that it's so obvious. Of course, it's a taco, but I don't know. I'm probably gonna have to go back to school to be some sort of psychologist or behavioral economist to do that, because that's where we come into, and we're going to go into this another segment right now called FACO, but that's where I run into a lot of FACOs. Have you ever heard that word, FACO?
Just when you've used it like a couple weeks ago.
Okay, we're alongside promoting you, and we're going to help you get to the Olympics one way or another spiritually. We have a lot of our friends on the audience here. They will spiritually help you, but we also have to promote this word. And I know I'm probably going to get shot for it later on when I become president. But a FACO is a 4-letter word, right? It rhymes with another 4-letter word. It's used to describe someone who, let's say, lacks, for lack of a better definition, is insulting to the taco world and the culture, right? So let's say people like Rachel Ray. Right. If you're a big Rachel Ray fan, you might want to tune away. But she once attempted to show her audience a way to literally F up pozole. Did you ever see that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, it's a YouTube. If you go onto her, she if you're a fan of her, you see how she cooks. She uses a lot of processed stuff. And anyway, I used to be a fan of her, but when I saw this, I'm like, that's a FACO. So she's a FACO. And so each week we try to scour the internet world and find fellow FACOs. And sometimes they don't even know they're FACOs. And sometimes we're FACOs. Like I've done things where people have said, dude, that was a FACO move. And I'm like, so sometimes we're self-imposed FACOs. So this week's FACO his name is Matt Preston. He's down in Australia. Now, I found him. Like, it looks like he knows what he's doing, but he appears to be a Rachel Ray because he has this publication, or he writes for this, I don't know, they're called magazines or websites. It has over 4 million, subscribers. That's a lot of people. And in one of the things he highlighted, and there was a lot of activity there, he called it the Spice Up Your Taco Tuesday with this 1-pot cheesy nachos with chili con carne. And I can't do an Australian accent. He also has a black bean and corn nachos. And one of the ingredients is this, I can't even pronounce it. It's crème fraiche. It's a French word. Crème. It's supposed to emulate sour cream, but it's French. And he has that, like, so look, if it comes out great, it sounds like it's good, but 4 million people, you're influencing people to believe. He's using words like that attract people. It's comida mexicana. And that, to me, that's why he's a FACO, because look, if you're going to try to influence, do it the right way. and I'm not saying that we are the gatekeepers. My wife's from Scotland. When we got married, I asked, in my head, I want to get married in a kilt. But before I did that, I went to several of her good friends and family members, and I asked them permission. Now, some of them laughed at me like, we don't own Scotland. And they didn't say it like that. They said it with a Scottish accent, which my wife hates when I try to use. But they said, one of them was like, yeah, that's cool. At least you asked. And I think that's the problem that I have. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, Jose has famously said this: Mexican food will do what Mexican food will do. And Mexican food is one of the top 5 foods in the world right now. It's not a surprise. So it's going to do what it wants to do. But if you're going to try and make it, at least have respect for the people who make it on a daily basis and the people who made it before us, the people who came before us. So I know that was a long FACO thing. I usually have to get it out of my system porque I didn't take my medication this morning. But do you have a FACO?
Do I have a FACO?
It could be an ex-boyfriend or a current boyfriend. It could be anybody, but it's a chance to let it out.
Let's see. I probably do. I can't come up with one at the top of my head, but I will let you know if it does come up.
And look, if we have a show every week, if you come on one day, you're doing your training, you're like, that FACO, hijo de su faqueada madre, then send it to us and we'll do the research. We'll send Jose on assignment and we'll get it. So now I want to switch over to talking to you about, your profession. Again, for our audience members, we're speaking to Regina Martinez. She is a doctor, and she's also trying to qualify for the Olympics in 2026. And so in a little while, we'll, as we start wrapping up the show, we will invite people if they want to ask questions or get to know you a little bit better. I see Ray down there. He has an awesome show on the same platform, and he probably knows about athletics more than I do. So please, Ray, if you're, or anybody, if they want to talk to you a little later on the show, we can do that. But here I want to talk a little bit about your profession. What got into you wanting to become a doctor? Like, I know it's a question you probably get asked a lot, but I know a lot of people who, well, not a lot of people. I know lots of people. I don't want to sound like him, but especially when I was going to college and I met people who were like, hey, I want to be a doctor. And 2 semesters in, they're like, F this, I'm going to go into sociology. I'm not saying sociology is easier, but what is it? I'm guessing, the same determination that is pushing you towards accomplishing this Olympic goal probably helped. Like, what got you into wanting to be a doctor?
Yeah. So the core reason I think is in general is like I really like to help people, and I like to serve people with any way that I can. And I'm also very passionate about like breaking barriers and like stereotypes and kind of pushing forward boundaries. And so that's kind of part of my nature. I'm also very ambitious. And I can be very like ADHD, like I can think of like all these projects and things I want to do, and some I carry out, and then some I like kind of fizzle out. But in general, so the reason I wanted to be a doctor is because I wanted to help people. And I know there's a lot of ways to do that. That's not necessarily just medicine. But one of the things, I guess, was recognizing that, for instance, especially like emergency medicine, which is what I am in now, it's one of the most vulnerable times for a person, probably in their lifetime even. You were healthy, and all of a sudden you're either sick acutely, or you find out you have like cancer, or you were hit by a bus. Like there's all these kinds of chief complaints, we call them, come into the hospital. And a lot of times too, I think the within the U.S. like medical system, patients that don't have medical care and have no way to like finance private medical care come to the emergency department to be seen. And so in general, I think the idea and just like the environment of being with people like kind of at their worst is something that is so humbling, and it's just fills me with so much kind of like gratitude to be able to be a part in their care. And then the actual nature of the job, like you have to be very compassionate, but also think on your feet, and kind of be efficient. And it's like go, go, go. And I think it fits really well with my personality and just how I
Mhm.
was raised. I'm also the oldest cousin, the oldest granddaughter on both sides of the family. I'm one of like 27 cousins. So I'm used to like a lot of chaos and like a lot of things happening.
That's typical for Mexicanos, right? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm the ringleader. At least I was. Now it's like everyone's old now and everything. But when I was little, we would play and things, and it would get pretty crazy. So,
So,
overall, yeah, helping
uh,
people.
so how long did it take you to get through med school?
4 years.
4 years, and you've been in Miami now for a little bit over a year.
A little bit less, but yeah, close to a year.
So I'm guessing you graduated high school when you were like 10 years old.
No,
See, for all you guys
I,
down there, that's how you flirt. I'm not trying to flirt with you. I'm married. But no, you seem relatively young, right? You said ambitious. All these things seem like they're helping you with your goal, right? You just to like, how do you manage practice? And I want to get back to the emergency medicine, but how do you manage all that? Like to train, to work, and I'm imagining during the pandemic, it has taken a toll on a lot of people. But how do you do all that?
yeah. Honestly, I think it's been both kind of together have been super helpful. Because for instance, like when I don't work out or when I don't train or like when I'm not moving my body, like I find I'm more tired at work. I find that like and like in the hospital and things, like I think having to like feeling the need and the desire to like want to train helps me not only like when I leave work, it helps me like completely detach. Like I get to just do something for myself for like a couple hours. Um, and just like decompress is awesome because otherwise the toll of what we see and do in the hospital like can really get to you. And I found like it's decreased burnout significantly for me to have this other hobby and this other thing to focus on, where like I'm when I'm not in one I'm doing the other and vice versa. So like and even like the training and all of everything that I do with the skiing helps me because when I finally go into work I sometimes feel like, okay, like I'm physically like ready, like I've already like been oxygenated. I like ate, I drank water, and now I'm here to like now like train my mind and like learn and see other
Mm,
patients and do all these things. So I think it's actually been really helpful in residency, especially now, which is where I am in my training in medicine. I have like 2 more years left of emergency medicine before I'm officially an emergency medicine doctor. Um, I think it's helped just kind of have that and then just making the time. So sometimes I've realized whenever I'm most tired after like a 12, 8, and like 16-hour shift, that's when I need to like work out or like move the most. And it's the hardest. And that's one of the things I've learned throughout this whole process is like not just training your body, but training your mind and like
mm.
becoming stronger in that way. So you're like, I'm exhausted. And that's when your mind and your body is just like, no, let's not do this. And that's when you have to push the most to just be like, no, we're gonna do the last thing we want to do right now is work out. But it's the thing that we most need. So we're gonna do it. And you go with zero expectations.
Yeah. So, what
And
are
I think
some
that gets you
tips?
really far.
What are some tips for people? Because I mean, we heard this term the last 3 years about mental health. And let's just be honest. I mean, mental health just didn't show up with the pandemic. It's been around for a long time. And I believe that one of the catalysts in modern day is this social media, right? What are some tips that you have because you also have a pretty good profile. By the way, on the cookie, I have her Instagram and her website, but I couldn't get the TikTok because for other reasons. But you have a pretty good presence on TikTok. How do you social media could overwhelm people. I mean, it does. It just does. Let's just call it what it is. It's a distractor. It's not really, it's very rarely a beneficial thing, but it has a lot of benefits to it. But most of us get distracted. What are some tips you have that could help, simple tips? Because you're as human as we are. What
Yeah.
helps you out through like managing those priorities and still have time to do social media? Because your profile's pretty cool.
Yeah. So in general, I feel like social media, so it's like you said, there's a lot of like mixed, there's benefits and negatives of it, especially when it comes to mental health. I think that to me the biggest thing is like to never compare yourself to others and never try to like, because a lot of social media like it can be fake, you know. It's what you want to portray. You want to portray like all the good, um,
Mm-hmm.
and that, and so I feel like just for me, for instance, I have social media, but I don't actually see things on social media a lot. Partially it's because I'm really busy, but partially is because like um you know, I feel like sometimes it can affect mental health, especially depending on, um, you know, it's there's just a lot going on in the world, and there's a lot also on social media, and so I try to not like see it as much, or just if I follow people, I like it to be, you know, more positive, more like things that will add to
Mm-hmm.
kind of to my growth, to my well-being, and things in general. That's kind of like
Yeah.
my general principle. And with my own social media, I try to be as like honest and transparent as I can be. Like I don't necessarily try to post nice things just to post nice things or things. And so, because I know a lot of like influencers, they'll post like something almost every day, and it's just like a nice picture and portray like these little glimpses into their lives. I try to do both, and a lot of it, the day-to-day things, I post on my story actually. I think
Mm-hmm.
probably my story is a much better portrayal of like what my life is like versus what's actually posted on pages and things. Um, but yeah, and the reason why I have social media, I actually started my accounts because I have a background in public health as well. I did my master's in public health and epidemiology, and so I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to open up these platforms to like share like facts about public health. But in medical school, I got some like criticism for like, you know, you're not a doctor yet, you can't be giving, and I wasn't giving out like medical tips or things like that, just basic things that are public health related that a lot of people don't know. Like, for instance, you can't give honey to a baby less than 1 year old because if the honey has spores, they can get botulism or like floppy baby syndrome. That's something that I had never heard of in the past until I was like 24 in my master's. Meanwhile, if I had had a kid beforehand and my doctor hadn't told me not to give the baby honey, my baby would have, you know, I probably had, you know, floppy baby syndrome. Not that I have the kids, but so I started my profiles to like give more like public health
Mm-hmm.
like awareness and things, um, and then got some criticism about that in med school, and then in residency I've just kind of started sharing my journey into like the medical field, a lot of like reflections and like blogs on like this. I had this rotation, and this is what I loved about it. This is what I hated about it. This is what I learned, or like this was a funny moment. So I also like humor, and I think that's something that kind of
Yeah.
gets me through life is being able to acknowledge your mistakes and laugh at them, or just like see the the growth in it, and then also just kind of like shrug it off and build from that, but using humor, I think is really funny. So compared to
So
other like health people on social media, I feel like I'm much more like, look
so
at me,
so
like.
so you would never stand up and go slap a fellow doctor, right? Because you know you should. Quick question: if exercising is good for the body, right? Like if you exercise, it's good for your body, right? Everybody would agree with that, except the people who believe that the earth is flat. And there's people like that. There's like 30% of people believe anyway, if exercising is good for the body, what is an exercise for the mind? And I ask specifically you because you have a lot going on, right? You're training for the Olympics, you're practicing medicine. You know, it's busy. I could imagine, you know, with the mass mandates and being in Florida, there's a lot of other things going on. What is an exercise for your mind? If exercising, physical activity is for the body, what is the equivalent for the mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. So actually the way I see it, and this is also part of my public health background, is that it's all integrated. So
Mm-hmm.
I see it like physical health, I see like mental health, and I see emotional health. And I think all of those play into each other. So even for instance with like physical exercise, it also affects the mind because you release endorphins, and that in itself like makes you happy. It's like happy drugs in the brain. Um, and then like if your emotional health, like really, I think for me personally, it affects, like I'm a very sensitive person, so it really affects my mental health as well. And so I find that just being very kind to yourself and not being too hard on yourself has made a world of a difference. Like I think probably by nature I'm more of a type A person, but in life I've like learned to be more type B, to learn to be like more self-compassionate if I make mistakes, because having that um, also I think it improves your mental health, and it's that like positive self-talk that really helps like bring good mental health habits into your life. And sometimes, for instance, like in in general, like life is pretty tough, and I feel like people assume that because I'm doing all these things, I'm like all well put together, and I'm not. Like, um, I've had points where I like probably I don't think I was like clinically diagnosed with depression, but I have had like I'm sure I've had depression, and I'm sure I have anxiety.
You're a doctor. You can self-diagnose,
What
no?
I
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That's probably another myth, huh?
and
Right?
in those moments, sometimes it's like you have to just go back to the basics. Like if you physically, like mentally and emotionally can't, or having just a hard time like moving forward, you have to like be mindful and use this mindfulness to be like, okay, well, I need to eat, I need to drink water, and I need to sleep. And then slowly that'll also start like affecting your mental and emotional health so you get to a better place. And then in general, just like training your mind, I think, like I was mentioning a little bit before, is like pushing yourself. Sometimes the mind is amazing, and I've learned this through both medicine and skiing because they're the two of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, like by far. Um, is recognizing, like sometimes even framing. So yeah, life is hard, and the moment you accept it, or like, yes, skiing is really hard. Before I was like, oh man, I'm just not good enough. I'm never gonna make it. This is a really tough sport. Same thing with medicine. Oh, I'm probably at the bottom of my class. This is really hard. How am I gonna do it? And instead of seeing it that way, I stopped and I started framing things. It's like, yeah, skiing is the hardest sport that exists. It's hard for everyone. We're all struggling. So like, like accepting that makes it even better because you're not necessarily focusing on yourself and kind of spiraling on your own faults and like affecting yourself in that way. You're thinking more positively and like acknowledging like, yes, this is hard, and I'm sure it's hard for everyone else, and I know it's hard for everyone else, and like, so how can we like that just in itself helps like um helps you get more like self-compassion to kind of keep going and to keep
You
building.
you hit on something that I heard you in the beginning of you answered the question is basically practicing gratitude, right?
Yes,
Being
especially.
to
Yeah.
yourself, being kind to yourself, and then being kind to others, right? And oftentimes we forget about this. This show's about tacos, the taco life, but I think my parents were taqueros for 30 years. My mom is still a taquera. She's still making food, right? Like her refrigerator is like if she still goes to Costco for the taco truck to stock it up. So it'll never be out of her. But my dad was he was a very compassionate guy. A lot of people hurt him, and a lot of people said bad things to him. But what I learned from him was he was very forgiving and very compassionate. And I gotta believe that that's what made the tacos great too, right? When you're talking about taking care of yourself physically and then taking care of yourself mentally. When you're approaching a patient, like you don't have to tell them, "Hey, I'm compassionate, by the way. I'm grateful." It is seen in your treatment, right? Of how you take care of that patient. And I gotta believe that that's without them knowing, they're getting tacos in their prescriptions or something. Would you ever prescribe
Yeah.
tacos?
Probably. I would give recommendations. But no, I think you're 100% also like hit the nail. Is like that gratitude of focusing on the positives and like being present, and just there's so many things to be grateful of in each day and in your surroundings. I think that, and even if there's like 1,000 negative things, like if you can find the one positive, and being grateful for that, I think it definitely makes a huge difference.
Yeah. So if you're going to watch the news, just wait till the end because they usually have good stories at the end. They usually lead with all the atrocities and everything. But anyway, at this point, we're going to start wrapping it up. But I wanted to invite anybody down in the lounge area and the auditorium area. If you guys have any questions for Regina, can we take a few questions if somebody's
Yeah,
ready to
for
go?
sure.
And if not, then that's cool too. More tacos, more tortillas for us. So at this point, if anybody wants to I want to thank, of course, Elizabeth, Paul, Chris, Natalie, Ray, and my sister Patty. Oh, she's here. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, but as we start wrapping it up, we usually finish with a talk quote. Remember what a talk quote is? It's a quote, but with a little bit of a taco twist to it. And we have one that I think applies to you, and well, sort of applies to you. The talk quote is, are you ready?
Ready.
Never be afraid to ask a taquero for more chile. What comes to mind when you hear something like that?
To me, I think it's like just ask for what you want in life, and just in whether that's whatever that is to you. Uh, and I also think it's like good to add a little spice into your life, whatever that means to you.
Yeah, because chili is spicy, but people think that Mexican food and tacos in particular are like they're spicy, and they're not. It's the salsa's on the side. But sometimes when you ask a taquero or they ask you, los quieres con todo, like con todo, right? Chile, cilantro, the cilantro, cebolla, and the salsa. And most taqueros that I know, they always have a different salsa in the back. They don't put it on the menu,
Yeah.
but you have to ask for it,
Yeah.
right?
And you never know how much you can take until you try it. So
Yeah. No, but I love your response because it is don't be afraid to ask the question. That's the whole thing. Like, and I thought of this talk quote because I was reading, I've been going through a book on journalism. Not that I want to be a journalist, but it was basically this guy puts out the case that where did modern journalism start going wrong, and he puts it back in the 1980s, and he talks about certain heroes in his life, and one of those heroes or one of those mentors said, and don't be afraid to ask the questions. And they were talking about being in the White House briefing room, like ask the questions, especially if it's going to be spicy. And I think that that's the thing that I feel you're going through, right? You have lots of questions of the sport that you never tried, and you're doing something that hasn't been accomplished, but people think you're accomplished, and you still have to ask questions regardless of how it's going to come out, because you talk about this guy from McAllen that's helping you. That's, you have to ask. So if you didn't ask.
And to be honest with you, like the moment I decided to ask, I was scared. I was really scared, and I was shocked by how much I had this fear, and I was like, why am I afraid? And I realized it's because I'm afraid of failure. Because I mean, realistically, it's the chances that at that point now I've worked harder, and I think it's more realistic. But the chances of failure are huge, and getting over that fear and just taking the leap and trying it, you never know how far you'll get. Um, like this was me being the first Mexican woman on the national team, and then I was the first Mexican woman to go to the World Ski Championships last February, and then the first Mexican woman to actually qualify. So I qualified for these Beijing Olympics, but I wasn't able to go. I qualified the last day. There weren't enough quota spots open for more athletes, so I wasn't able to go. And it all was a crazy idea, just a thought that kind of lingered for a year or so, that I just asked the question. He his energy just kind of fueled me, and so that's another important point is finding people who will support you no matter how crazy your dreams or your goals are, and then just taking it one step at a time. I think the biggest thing for me has been almost having no expectations, because then you will always be surprised, and you can keep going forward and not be disappointed, and it helps you just see how far you've come if you don't have these set expectations.
So in 2026, I often see, I don't watch the Olympics that much, but I'm going to tune into this one, because can we put a sticker on a helmet that says 10,000 tacos, powered by 10,000 tacos?
I wear headbands. Yes, you can. For definitely, we have headbands.
Sponsorship opportunity, people, right? This is a sponsorship.
Yeah, actually, if anyone has a business or anything, I do get a lot of media attention because there's not. So.
Oh, you kind of cut out a little bit. You kind of
I'm also a
cut
doctor.
out a little bit.
Oh, do you hear me now?
Yeah. You said you do get a lot of media attention, and that's when you
Yes,
cut out a little bit.
because I'm like an exotic skier, or like the Mexican team. Now it's growing. We're all exotic skiers, so we get a lot of attention. They're like, oh, these Mexicans like are skiing. And then also for being a doctor, the word has gotten out. The ski community is pretty small, and so so if anyone wants to help out, I have a website and there's a place to donate there for my GoFundMe, but also any kind of collaboration or partnership or anything that I can do to help you, whatever that means. Like, I'm open to it. So definitely reach out. My website's actually, I don't know if it's there, but it's my first name, last name.org.
Perfect. Yeah, no. And we did put a link to your website on the fortune cookie for anybody who wants to. And then we put a link to your Instagram because we need to get that as up. TikTok, you got like over 10,000 in TikTok, but on Instagram, let's get Instagram. Let's make you famous. All 12 of my followers follow her. I'm kidding. But no, you wanna, again, thank you so much for making the time. I know you're busy, and we reached out to you. You came back right away, and I just can't thank you enough for helping us promote this, because I think it's cool. First Mexican female to represent Mexico in cross country skiing. That'd be so cool. So
thank you so much.
So, next week we will be having the first part of our 2-part series. It's going to be called Cinco de Gringo, because we want to talk about this upcoming date in American history. It's the 5th of May, and it's a very important date for Americanos, for the güeros. They celebrate like crazy. So we're going to try to do a 2-part thing next week. So Regina, again, thanks for helping us learn more about cross-country skiing, because I bet that a lot of people didn't know that until now. And we want to we want to talk to you right after you win that gold. So we want to put in dibs on as soon as you get the gold. We want to be the first to talk to you. we're going to be pulling for you. We have to. So,
yeah, thank you so much.
Again.
I really appreciate your support and this opportunity. And again, if anyone wants to reach out to me, feel free. My website, there's the Instagram, and all the links are also on the Instagram too.
Awesome. So, So on behalf of my co-host, Jose Ralat, who's on assignment, and thanks again, Regina. I'm the proud son of a taquero, and this is 10,000 Tacos. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Have a great day, todos.
Adios.
Let me get the bot again, and cuídense todos. Thanks. Goodbye, Regina.